something special inside you.
Welcome to GNG Podcast with your host, speaker, best-selling author, Chaz Jackson.
Yo, what's going on, kings and queens? It's your boy Chaz Jackson coming back to you once again, representing GNG Gifting and Gift. Hey, I just personally want to take the time to tell you thank you for giving me your eyes and your ears once again as we get ready to dive deep into some inspiration that I pray will plant like a seed in your mind and assist you in becoming a greater version of yourselves. So whether you a young adult, teacher, parent, youth advocate, pastor, whatever brought you to this presence right now, I want each and every one of you to know that we're all gifted differently to make a difference. And I know there are difference makers that's tuning in. Go ahead, let us know that you're there. Share it out to anyone that you feel like will resonate with our theme with my man, David J. Flood. The giant is going to bring massive value to each and every one of you. I'm going to go ahead and tell you, get your pen and paper ready. He's going to bring some golden nuggets, some value that you will be able to take and apply, whether it's that one or two techniques. I promise you, you won't be sorry for me asking you to do that right now. But again, let us know you're there. I want to go through what the mission of this platform is. And if you've been viewing or if it's your first time listening in, this is to equip young males on their journey towards influencing themselves in personal development. And I personally want to continue to take this challenge, and I ask you to take this challenge with me on becoming a passionate visionary who is determined to leave a legacy for themselves by adopting unwavering life values and serving others in the area of gifting led by God. And that's the mission that we're on. I'm going to read off this short bio, and I'm going to get this giant on for you guys. David Flood is married, father of 2 children. As a youth motivational speaker, he is a board member of Kids Plus, a nonprofit which helps special needs children. He is a mentor of the Drug and Alcohol Task Force in his hometown of Newport, New York on Long Island. He is also a lector in his church and a hospice volunteer. While he's doing all that, he has accumulated and has spoken in 38 states and Canada to more than 400,000 students. His last 3 Facebook videos have received over 100 million views. I know you got that pen and paper. I got my man, David J. Flood. Welcome to GNG Livestream Podcast. Are you ready to get it, King?
I am. I'm good to go, Chaz. Nice to be with you on a Wednesday evening.
Thank you so much for blessing me with your presence. Now, I know I read off that short bio. Is there anything else that you would like for the audience to know based off of what I just shared?
No, I'm a big deal on Facebook, but I'm not a big deal in my house. Just like you too, right? I'm sure.
Yeah, most definitely. Yeah. And I know everyone's eager to know more about you. Is there any way that you can go in and kind of share your story on how you became a youth motivational speaker and been able to inspire so many people up to this point in your life?
Yeah, Chaz, and I hope this is inspirational for, I don't know what the demographic is for the people who watch your podcast, young, old, but at 45 years old, 46 years old, I knew for a long time that I wanted to help others, but at 46 years old, I decided to quit my job and become a speaker. I quit, and that's hard to do when you have a family. But I knew in my heart that I had a message, to bring to people. And I thought that I could help people, and especially young people who are the hardest audience to speak to, by the way, to talk to 13 to 18 year olds, talking to adults is easy, but getting up in front of, kids, because they have a built-in BS detector. They know when you're not being truthful and you're not being genuine, and they have the attention span of a small bee or whatever. The kids will pay attention to you for about 10 seconds. But I have a son, which is in my anybody who's seen videos of me on the internet, knows that I have a son named Justin with autism. And he was my inspiration to go out and talk to kids, just about, not about him, but about how, he was my on-ramp to the highway of kindness, about how to be kind and treat people with my talk, Chaz, is about dignity, respect, and compassion. So it was for your listeners and for anybody really, it's listening to your heart. But of course, you want to be able to earn money, doing what you love to do. So I wanted to do something that made me feel good. And fortunately I've been able to do both, which I think very few people, have that, are blessed with that. We're all blessed. But to be able to step outside that fear and do what you love to do, and then earn a living where you can live on. You don't have to get wealthy. You don't have to get rich, but there's other ways of being rich, and one of them, I think I'm rich in a lot of different ways. I'm not rich financially. I'm probably more rich by what I'm blessed with, what I'm able to do, and the people I come into contact with. And people that I meet and that influence me are worth, so much more than the money that I get paid.
Wow. And it sounds like you embrace being uncomfortable, because I know you had to go into, unknown. I know you had a vision of where you wanted to go, but
Yeah.
there was obstacles that kind of played a factor in that. Was there any time that throughout your journey and getting into the speaking and with the things that your son was going through, did you realize, when did you really realize that your story needed to be shared with the world? Like, was there like a moment?
Chaz, no one's ever said that to me before, that I embrace being uncomfortable. So I really appreciate that. I gotta, after we're finished here this evening, I gotta sleep on that one. That's really intense, that I embrace being uncomfortable. So thank you for that. I got to think of that. Was there an aha moment? After I speak, Chaz, the line of kids to come up and speak to me is anywhere from 10 to 30 kids long. In an average school, it's about 15 to 20 kids, sometimes more. Sometimes there's as many as 40 kids who want to speak to me afterwards. And I don't know, if there was an aha moment. Principals and teachers and counselors would come up to me and say, Dave, you're really connected with our kids. And then people would call me back and, they'd want me to come in and speak. So it was having an impact. But I guess early aha moments would be kids. So, I'd share a story, Chaz, and kids would come up and say, that they identified, or they, that the same thing happened to them. Now, I'm talking about my son with autism, or my father being an alcoholic, or me being in recovery. And a kid would come up to me and say, like, that they're an LGBTQ kid, or they're gay, or a young girl. I remember a 9th grader coming up to me and telling me she had a baby. She's 15 years old and she's got a child. And they'd come up and say, Mr. Flood, the same thing happened to me. And our stories are completely different. But what was the same, Chaz, was the feelings that they had, that confusion, the loneliness, the isolation, the I'm different. So it wasn't my story. It was that they would, and they couldn't express themselves. All they know is that they felt something when I spoke. So our stories were different. The situations were different. Where we live were different. Where the ethnicity was different. The religion was different. The gender was different. But they felt the same way. So I've had a lot of aha moments. I can't put my finger on the exact one. But yeah. So that's so powerful. When a kid comes up to you, when you're in rural Nebraska and a 15-year-old girl tells you that she's got a baby and she feels just like you do, it's incredible. It's incredible. So,
and you spoke a mouthful there, and I think what you just shared is where a lot of speakers fail in some points of making that connection, because it seems like a lot of times we can pound people with facts, and then especially in that population, like you mentioned before, 13 to 18, even. I mean, if you get to my daughter, she's in kindergarten. Even in that instance, like
that's a whole nother story.
If you're not connecting with that population right then and there, if you're just hitting them with facts, some might, a low percentage might be with you, but a huge percentage is going to tune you out. But I like how what you were referring to is you share yourself, you truly get authentic with them, and you expose yourself. And I think that's where a lot of our kids truly understand and that you are practicing empathy and that you are sharing some of your flaws. You know what I mean? Because I feel like, we live in a world where we're living up to the standard of being perfect. And whenever we're actually perfectly imperfect, if that makes sense. And we all have our
Absolutely, it does.
struggles. And I
Yeah.
like how you kind of shared, the kids that you're working with, they come from different scopes, different stories. We all have our story, but it all comes back to that emotional standpoint that, hey, I've been broken before. I've figured out some ways on how to overcome that brokenness, and I want to share that with you. So that's gold what you just shared right there, for sure.
When Chaz, and when kids come up and they share that, I've gotten a lot of compliments, but the biggest one and the most common ones I get are kids will say to me, especially middle school kids, sometimes high school, but they'll say, "Thanks, Mr. Flood, for not doing a PowerPoint presentation, like slides with words on them." And I've added slides to my talk, but they're really pictures of my family and funny pictures that I show. And then I do some slides to make the points that I talk about, but no writing, no 4 paragraphs of writing. And then the second thing they say to me, Chaz, is thank you for not trying to sell us something like a book. And I mean, I'll have a book soon and I'll want to sell it and promote it. But kids really want to hear stories. And it's interesting because when I started in this, I thought I needed letters after my name, an MD, PhD, MS, I'm this, I'm that, I'm a doctor, I'm an author. But kids really just want they want normal people to come in and tell them stories that they can identify with. And I think that's why I've been successful with administrators and principals and counselors and people who take care of kids and who educate kids, is because they like the regular guy, or the girl, or whatever, right? They like the regular person. That person sometimes does a better job connecting with kids emotionally. Certainly, you want to give some information, some meat and potatoes, right, to sink their teeth into and a call to action. But kids identify so much more. If it's one thing I've learned in this industry, it's kids identify so much more, with a storyteller than they do with someone who's got their doctorate in educating and going through all charts and graphs and things like that.
Yeah, it kind of goes back to that facts versus connecting. And the facts are necessary in some instances, but I feel like that connecting is the biggest focal point, especially in that age group. So, and it kind of brings me into the whole theme of our talk tonight. So your life is not about you. It's about all the people around you. So what kind of inspired you to kind of dive into that on episode 17 on GNG podcast? What does that thing mean to you, David?
It just means that we feel so much better. We all know implicitly that giving feels better than getting, and yet we forget it. It's for some reason, it's just I don't know why, but we just forget. But we all know, that when we do something nice for someone else, how much better we feel about ourselves. And, it's the people that you go around watching doing nice things for other people. I'm working on a video series right now, Chaz, and just a couple of quotes, from people, Booker T. Washington. Those who are happiest are those who do the most for others. Right. And then what I tie in, I found this quote years ago, and I didn't read a lot of her stuff. But Maya Angelou was an unbelievable poet.
Wow. I
got into her kind of from Robin Roberts on Good Morning America, whatever. I'm a loose follower of her, and I really need to read more of Maya Angelou. But she said something that really applies to me is people won't remember what you said or did, but they'll remember how you made them feel. And that's me, because I know how to make somebody feel, because I'm emotional and vulnerable. And what you said earlier about being vulnerable and exposing yourself and things like that, I was taught a long time ago, Chaz, in sales or in motivation or in trying to help someone, people identify so much more with your struggle than they do with your success. So when you're meeting somebody, you got to meet them in the struggle and talk about your struggle, and then you can take them over the bridge to success. And now I might not be the greatest person at motivating someone, but I certainly can talk about struggle with people and empathize with them and be with them, and then at least walk them or get them started on a path or direct them to another adult that they can trust that can really mentor them. That's my expertise. Is probably, it's funny, we refer to ourselves, as other speakers refer to us, I'm a tow truck. Like I can get the kid into the shop, but I can't fix them. So when I go into a school, I say, listen, I'm the tow truck driver. I can tell you, I got the kid into the shop. This kid's got a problem. You need to get him to the counselor, into counseling. He's got problems at home that he told me about, or she's got problems at home that she told me about. You'd be shocked. Well, maybe you wouldn't, Chaz, with how many kids come up to me and tell me things that they haven't told anybody because I'm safe. I'm leaving the school. Right. And I've been vulnerable. So I'm in this really unique position, but I have an obligation to share that with the counselor. If a girl comes up and tells me she was molested, or a boy comes up and tells me that he's using drugs, or a boy comes up and tells me that his dad drinks and drives. I had two little boys come up to me. One, a sixth grader, came up and told me, he said, Mr. Flood, my mom drinks and drives with me in the car every day. Wow. And I looked at him, and this is a sixth grader, and I said, who knows this? And he said, no one. And behind my back, I was waving to the counselor, and I said, listen, John, whatever his name was, this is years ago. I said, I need to connect you with somebody. He said, can I share that with somebody for you? And he said, yeah, that'd be okay. Wow. So that's a home run for me. And I've had kids tell me that they've been molested, and I'm like, who knows this? And they're like, no one. Wow. Yeah. So that's a responsibility that I have, that I do not take lightly.
Dude, I hope whoever listened to this, you did get your pen and paper. Hope you took down some copious notes of what he just shared, because that was gold. That was gold. If you didn't listen to me earlier, pause this bad boy, rewind it back, take that in. And even going back to Maya Angelou, so the kind of paraphrase, because a quote, I actually like her work. She says, there's no greater agony meaning mental suffering, than the bearing of an untold story inside of you. So when I hear you say that stuff, David, it's kind of like you broke that agony of sharing your story, and you spoke life into those kids, and you were oxygen to a suffocating kid at that moment, to where they're like, hey, someone else is going through some similar stuff or have been through some similar things, and I need to get this out. I need to get this out. So I applaud you, man, for what you're doing. It's phenomenal. And guys, I know God's going to use you to impact even more kids moving forward. That's really good stuff. Thank you for sharing that with the audience.
You're welcome.
Yeah, most definitely. And I know, so you said you got a book that you're writing that's coming along?
I'm working on something now. Justin, my son, and I, Chaz, have a little kids book coming out through a company called The Kids Book About. It's about autism. It's a book for little kids, for 5 to 9-year-olds, to be read to them by an adult, by a mentor, by a teacher, by their parents, etc. And then I have something coming out, probably maybe within a year or so, maybe a little bit longer than that. I've been working on it for a long time. And that'll be about recovery, addiction, autism. There'll be a little bit of that, just about fatherhood and for a general audience, but it'll be about fatherhood, parenthood.
Yeah, I like that. I'll definitely be praying about that. And how does that kind of tie into Kids Plus and some of the other nonprofits that you work with in New York?
Well, those are all things that have influenced me. Without a doubt, I like to keep my interest varied and yet specific, if that makes sense. I like to I got involved in those things because of my kids. And I got involved in the Drug and Alcohol Task Force because of, not necessarily my kids, but me and the home that I grew up in, that I could do a little bit of help. And volunteer work, again, is just feeling good about yourself, that I know I have something to give back. And it really, I don't do it to get stories, but I've got some of the greatest stories that I'm able to tell to kids from my volunteer work, from my work, working with nonprofits. Because again, and the other thing, just jumping back, Chaz, it's so important for anybody who's watching this. If you're a pastor or a mentor, or you want to be a speaker, or whatever you want to do, it's so important that you put some time and some space between you and your story before you go out and tell it. So, I meet a lot of principals or, people who hire speakers that come into schools. And I'll use the example of someone in recovery. Like if someone's going in as part of a recovery program and not getting paid, that person can go in no problem anytime. Or maybe a sexual abuse, a violent or a domestic violence survivor, a young woman, right, is going in to speak. They need to have some time between them and that, because you're not using the audience as your therapy. Like you're not up there just pouring your story out and, oh, poor me, poor me, poor me. You have to make it apply to how the audience can use that and identify with it. When they're getting paid to do that, certainly someone who's going to go in and talk about addiction, if they're getting paid, they need to have some time and some context between them and their story. Because a lot of times you see these speakers come in, or even someone who's a youth pastor, or or just a mentor who's working with kids, or even a counselor. Counselors have to be in counseling, so it's not something that I take very lightly. But it's super important to really understand the position of power that you're in, because you don't want to screw kids up. You don't want to, and you don't want to mess yourself up more. So.
Oh, most definitely, and you gotta have those deep roots,
Yes.
Those kids are placing trust in you. If you do win their trust, I mean, what type of brand are you leaving? Whatever school you go into, whatever nonprofit you go into, that is your brand, and I really truly believe that your character. It has to be very strong to be able to impact and have a sustainable career as a speaker. And I definitely relate with you on a lot of that you shared, for sure.
I got a great a principal at a school. It might have been in Ohio or Illinois. I forget where it was, Chaz, years ago. And he really paid me a high compliment. And he did it when he was introducing me. And I've never had anybody introduce me like that before. So he read my introduction like you did. But when he brought me up, he said, I guess he liked the word harmony. And he kept using, he said, David is in harmony. Everything that I read on his website was the same, but from all the emails that he sent me. And he was the same in person when he got to the school. And I watched him in the hallway, and he was the same. Mm-hmm. So he was always in harmony. Like nothing on his website was different about when I met him. It's exactly what I expected. I saw him. He looked like that. He shook hands like that. He sounded like his website. What he was written on his website, he said the same words. So he always said I was in harmony. And I was like, wow, this guy's really, he ad-libbed a little bit of my introduction, but it was just so good. And I was like, I went up to him afterward at the end of the day, and I said, you know what, Mike, thank you for that. Like, that was amazing. He said, no, Dave, I really got that you're the same guy on your website that emailed me, that talked to me on the phone, that walked into my office, that spoke to my kids. You were the same guy. There was nothing, there was no like, oh, that's like just in harmony. And I think that's a great compliment you can pay someone.
I like that word, harmony. I like that
word. Yeah. It's not a word I use a lot. I kind of know what it means to be in sync. But it's not a word I use a lot, but it was just a high compliment. So we need to be genuine. We need to be vulnerable. We need to be in harmony, the same person that we present online. That's a great transition for me and you to talk about kids online. Are you in harmony? Are you the same person you're putting out there, on your social posts?
Oh, most definitely. Because at the end of the day, whoever you are off the camera is going to be revealed.
Yes,
it always comes to light. So yes. we have to really take care of what we're doing off the camera and allowing that to kind of match up. So that's good stuff. And obviously, you know the whole focal point, the focus is to equip young males as they strive to grow in personal development. So taking it back to that 13, 18-year-old that's listening to you right now, is there a tip or technique that comes to mind to help them live their life in a sense of knowing that it's not about them, it's about other people? If they're struggling with living up to the theme of this episode, is there a tip or technique that you feel that you would like to share to kind of get them on the right path of living up to that theme?
Yeah, Chaz, I've been big on, I'm getting big and bigger on mentorship. I really, I might have shared this with you. I'll show you a book that I was reading. recently. I probably shared this with you, but it's called The Boy Crisis.
Yeah, you did. I got to get that book.
And it's just it was eye-opening for me about what young men need. Young men who have fathers and young men who don't even have fathers. That any type of mentorship that you can get. I think you need a mentor. I think you need a male figure in your life that you can look to and bounce things off of, and and walk with to pick you up. And certainly, no one does anything great alone. Like we think of, you think of senators or LeBron or Albert Pujols, or I was a big Poppy fan, David Garcia or David Ortiz, or all these or sports stars or actors, George Clooney. I think if you really ask them, no one does anything great alone, Chaz. We always get help from other people. So in that sense, my life's not about me, and then it's what I can give back. So when I tell people I've been in recovery for 30 years, I haven't used drugs and alcohol in 30 years, and everybody claps. They're like, oh, that's amazing. I say, listen, after they're done clapping, I say, you didn't just clap for me. You clapped for all the people who helped me, because no one gets sober alone. You don't become LeBron James alone. He had coaches, he had mentors, his mom and dad, his family, right? All those people, does he work really hard? Absolutely. George Clooney didn't become an actor alone. I mean, Anthony Robbins didn't become Anthony Robbins alone. Yes, he worked very, very hard, but you can't do it in a bubble. You need people. Now, so that's the way you need people to help lift you up. Then it's your job to give back, right? And show that it's not all about you, and do things, go back to the community, go back and give back to the community like athletes do, like celebrities do. And I think a lot of them do. And I think a lot of them do it and don't get recognized for it, and do it very quietly. A lot of them have nonprofits and kids things that they support, and I'm not at a point where I could do anything like that. And I'm not a big fan of just throwing money at a problem too. Investing in what Magic Johnson did is amazing. Investing in businesses in Los Angeles and try to, uplift the community I find that amazing. That's really, really, really investing. That's your time too. So again, all of those things I'm talking about is that it's a worldwide, it's not a worldwide, but it's a circular thing. People lift you up, you lift other people up, and then they continue to lift you. So it's just about people. We don't live in bubbles, Chaz. We don't live in bubbles.
And like everything that you've been saying, mentors, I do truly believe that they're key. And I believe this was Les Brown. He had said a quote like this, and I'm paraphrasing, but he said, it's hard to see the big picture if you're inside of the frame. So see the big picture of your life. Yeah. So you need people that looking in on your picture to kind of call you out on any of your mess ups, or if something can be corrected and tweaked a little bit. Like you said, LeBron James had coaches, Michael Jordan,
absolutely.
I mean, this guy had coaches that was critiquing everything that he was doing as far as his shooting, his defensive play. So I mean, no one's ever been great by themselves. Yeah, I truly believe that, and a lot of things that I share with the kids that I work with is you have to look at your relationships like water. And I mean, there's a million of analogies that you can use, but I really like this one. Looking at it in the sense of water, is your relationship nourishing you or is it drowning you? And really pay attention to those drowning relationships, because that keeps us from shining our light authentically, and it keeps us in a low state as far as fear, guilt, shame. I mean, we can plug the blank. I mean, there's so many things that come from a drowning situation, but really fueling yourself, understanding, hey, you can't see the big picture by yourself. Your perspective on yourself is highly, highly important, but you need the other individuals that's coaching you, holding you accountable, making your dream come true while building that character like we was talking about before. And that's truly some key stuff. Mentors. I like that. That's a huge tip and technique, young man. If you listen,
when you say mentors. It's funny. I don't know a lot about LeBron's family, but when you say Jordan, I think of his dad. And when anytime someone says to me Tiger Woods, I can't think of Tiger Woods without thinking of his dad. And those are just two very, very big athletes. I'm trying to think of other examples. Larry Bird's dad had a huge influence on him too. I'm trying to think of other people. But when I think of Jordan, I think of his dad. And Tiger was all about his dad. So I mean, now, but you really,
I guess you can throw Kobe in there too. I mean,
yeah, without a doubt, Kobe and his dad, absolutely.
Yeah, his dad played in the NBA. It was huge. I mean, Kobe was talking about how he was watching his dad at 2 years old.
Yeah,
playing them on the big screen, and he started playing basketball right in there. He said in an interview he started dribbling basketball by watching his dad. So
I think the other extreme is the Ball family. Like there, I won't go there, right? About Lonzo's dad, because that's like dad, the extreme dad, right? And then I think of like a guy like Anthony Robbins, who didn't have a dad. He had a single mom, but he found a mentor when he was 16 or 17 years old named Jim Rohn, who was an amazing speaker, an amazing motivational speaker, and really had a heavy influence on Anthony Robbins. So all of these guys, I think if you talk to Elon Musk, if you talk to, if you talk to Bill Gates, if you were able to talk to Steve Jobs, although, everything we read about Steve Jobs after the fact is that he wasn't that great a guy, but even Les Brown, if you talk to these people, they'll tell you talk to them for 5 minutes, they'll bring up the guy in their life that was that helped them. Dad, mentor, uncle, whoever it was, pastor.
Yeah, there's someone. Yeah. There's someone there help fueling that light. And and they're out there. They're out there. At times it has to be some work that has to be put in to find them, but they're there. And we have one in David J. Flood right here, for sure. And last question, GNG gift and a gift. I personally believe that physically we are a gift. This vessel, earthly vessel that we have, that you see in this camera, that's a gift. But I also truly believe that we're all gifted differently to make a difference. There's something in our thoughts, in our physicality, mentally, that we are supposed to contribute to the world. Now, I know there's somebody that's listening right now that hasn't necessarily figured out their gift, or they figured out their gift and they haven't necessarily had the confidence to speak it into existence or to strive to make it come to pass. As the last question for this episode, David, what comes to mind to bring that gift out, to encourage them to speak life into their gift?
I think it's listen to your passion. And, I'd probably get in trouble with some parents by telling kids, like, because I always ask kids, I go up to them and I say, hey, when kids come up to talk to me afterwards and they're discouraged or down, Chaz, I say to them, what's your passion? What's burning inside? What would you do for the rest of your life if even if it didn't matter, you just loved it, if you didn't get paid a dime? And that's, a weird thing to say to a 15 or 16-year-old, because you want them to get a job, right? Or go out and start a business or whatever. But I like to, let kids at least plant that seed in them and let them think about, man, I'd love to be a chef, Mr. Flood. Man, I'd love.
Yo, we're back. Have some technical difficulties there, but Mr. David Flood is dropping jewels right now, and we're going to go ahead and continue that question, David. As far as the gift that's inside of each and every one of us, if there was a young individual, male, female, that's having an issue with projecting and bringing that gift to life, or if they was having some issues, with finding their gift, continue elaborating on that question from earlier.
It's listen to your heart, and you can check yourself with someone, even when you're young. I still think, that he's talking to us all the time. It's, are we listening? And I'll just share, a really, what I think was one of the highest compliments I've ever gotten, and a very inspirational story. I speak at an event every summer. I've been going to Pennsylvania to do this event, 5 or 6 years in a row. And the second year I went, I gave my talk. And then the third year, when I was back there, a girl came up to me to speak to me after I spoke, and she said, "Mr. Flood, I'm Tasha. Do you remember me from last year?" And we spoke, and I said, "Yeah, Tasha, I think I remember me." And we started talking, And she said, Mr. Flood, I just want you to know that I go to college now, and I changed my major in college because of you. And she was going to become a special education teacher because something she heard in my talk pushed her to do that. So there's messages, and this is not just me, like I'm one of 7 billion people on the planet. There's messages coming to your listeners and kids all the time. It's, are you open? Are you open to the Holy Spirit to listen, to what God has in store for you, and listen to your heart? And you wouldn't be thinking about a subject so often if you weren't meant to do something, with it. And here's the one thing people should remember. No one ever did great no one ever did anything amazing without thinking about it for a long time. Like, nobody just wakes up and decides to do something. They've been thinking about it for a while. And if we search our hearts and search our souls deeply, we all know what we're here to do. We really do. It was implanted in us when we incarnated onto the planet. God implanted a message in all of us. It might be to be a cake baker, a nurse, a speaker, a podcaster, a construction person, an attorney, a doctor, a musician. It's implanted in you. Dig. Some of us have to dig a little bit harder to find it, but it's implanted in you, and just let it out. Just let it out. And you'll know, because you'll be in, you'll just be in that place when you feel so good about yourself. You'll know it's coming through.
Beautifully put. And I know you are in your gift. You're in your lane. You're shining on this camera, David. Thank you so much for blessing us with your time, your effort, your whole being. And look, I know your spirit is blowing like a torch with knowledge and beauty, and God's definitely using you, and you're facilitating and changing lives. You've already changed so many, and I know there's going to be even more coming soon, and I'm just so excited to see what God does for you moving forward. But again, thank you so much for blessing GNG Podcast with your presence.
I appreciate you having me on, Chaz. I am humbled. I am grateful. I'm grateful that God put you in my life.
Yeah, most definitely. And I know there is someone, David, that's listening to this right now, and they're like, I want to talk with this man. I want him to help me get to my next stage in my life. I want him to be the salt and the light in my life. Can you just share really quickly some of your contact information as far as social media of how someone can reach out to you?
Sure. So I'm an old guy, so a lot of Facebook. So David J. Flood, Youth Motivational Speaker, is Facebook. Instagram is David Flood Speaks. Email or website is davidjflood.com. So you can get my email and reach out to me through any of those platforms, mainly Facebook Messenger. Or you can Instagram message me too. That's fine. That's David Flood Speaks. But if a kid needs me, and what I would do is, if I couldn't help someone, I would hopefully be able to direct them to someone who could.
I love it, David. Thank you again. Continue to be the giant that you are. And I'm going to lead us out. I want each and every one of you to stay up with GNG. If you did listen to this whole thing, go back, rewind it. Again, let us know that you're here. Let us know what great tip you took from David today. Thank each and every one of you again for listening in. I want you to keep those crowns on your heart. And please remember this one thing here. We are God's echo. I love each and every one of you. Peace and love.